Hey everybody, it's Erich Davies, the creator of Eerie Hour with Erich. Today we're at Entertainment Junction here in Westchester, Ohio. That's near Cincinnati. And it's the largest indoor train display in the United States and supposedly in the world as well. But anyway, tonight's guest storyteller episode is going to be our on-site assistant, my brother, our executive producer's fiance, Megan. And she's going to be telling a really interesting story tonight. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's episode of Eerie Hour with Erich.
Aren't you scared?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Eerie Hour with Erich. I'm Megan, your guest host. Welcome to Around the Candles, where we tell scary stories of the strange, the macabre, and various urban legends. Tonight's story is Fay Hollow by Michael Landry. I was but a boy when I first discovered the grove and the wood, or perhaps when it discovered me. I came across the path leading to it down from my grandparents' house, where I often would visit in the summer months. Wild and free from the responsibilities of school, at perhaps 10 years of age, while willing away the days and the simple pleasures of fresh air and sunshine, I stumbled upon the strange dirt path, running through the forest, somehow sinister and inviting all at once. I recall the particular feeling of dreadful excitement I first had when I found the tree-lined trail. Unpaved but well worn by the passage of many small feet over a very long time. It curled and swayed this way and that, not appearing to obey any logic or whim, the twists and turns of its passages taking it through swaths of deep shadow, over fallen trees, and across babbling brooks. I had to follow it, of course, even though I knew that there was something darkly magical about the road I trod. I had played in the woods many times before. And though I was not the best natural pathfinder, I knew this trail had somehow never before lay where it now did. Still, a puzzle so mysterious at this, my natural boyish curiosity was simply too powerful for my inherent caution to overcome. I don't know how long I followed the path. Time and reality seemed to enter into a kind of waking dream as I traveled along. And as I continued, the sun gave way to sparkling moonlight, visible through the leaf-lined branches of the trees. Spreading wide above, stars, foreign and unknown to me, twinkling brightly with strangely eldritch light. Despite the oddity of my journey and the expectant terror that should have beset me from being alone in a place that I wholly was unfamiliar with, all that I felt was a sense of calm and belonging. The barest twinkling silver scraps of music reached my ears as I walked, so faint that I could almost be taken as my imagination. But the strange were so cheerful and inviting that any possible thoughts of discontinuing my journey were rapidly driven from my mind. The farther I got along the path, the closer I got to the music, the quicker my steps became, the feet slapping against the dirt in time with the rapidly increasing beat of my heart, and as it thundered in my chest. I was forced to pause for a moment. From the corner of my eye, I spotted a strange glint of moonlight, sharply reflecting from the inside hollowed-out portion of a tree just off the path. I faltered, unable to decide between continuing onwards at the bewitching music and investing this newly discovered phenomenon before ultimately choosing to pursue the latter. Surely the music would wait for me just a moment. Reaching into the tree, my fingers felt the cold smoothness of carved metal. I retrieved the object from within and found it was sort of pendant strung upon a leather thong and inlaid in silver. Its center stone encircled by an alien but beautiful script that was unknown to me. Most strangely, the gem itself softly glowed seemingly by means of its own power. As I studied my newfound treasure, I was shocked to discover that my feet, apparently, of their own accord, had continued to guide me along the path. Again, traveling towards the haunting music that still beckoned me onward, regaining conscious control of my passage, slightly shaken by my auto-ambulation. Despite the reassuring lilt of the music, I slipped the pendant into my pocket and cautiously proceeded, exhilarant and nervous, to discover that what might lie at the end of the forest path. At last, the way passed through a high wooden archway before opening into a large clearing, perhaps 100 yards in diameter, that, to my wonder, appeared to be occupied by a fantastic carnival. I continued walking, proceeding down the midway, running through the center of the grove, lined on either side by colorful booths, decorated with garish paints and sparkling lights, that offered games of chance and all manner of delight and affections. Dozens of other children ran about me, alone and in packs of 2, 3, or more, all squealing in glee. Each of the individual booths was appealing in its own right. The gaming stands offered great variety from ring tosses to whack-a-mole, and each bore a promise of enormous stuffed animals and prizes. Their features so well crafted as it seemed wholly lifelike. The food stands advertised the most sumptuous of treats, apples fairly dripping with caramel, blue and pink cotton candy, handed out in huge clouds atop paper cones, the foot-long hot dogs piled high with molten cheese and chili. Each of the offerings seemed to be so incredibly perfect that the thought of choosing one over the other proved overwhelming. So instead, I simply continued to walk along and marvel again at each newly revealed sight. The music that had drawn me along the path continued here unabated, saturating the air, but somehow simultaneously coming from nowhere. Reaching the center of the clearing, I found that the midway reached a sort of hub, the two other paths combining to create a Y, dividing the fairground into 3 roughly equal parts. Each of the paths was lined with booths similar to the ones I had already traversed, and on further inspection, each section of the fairgrounds played host to a different attraction. In one was a roller coaster, its first hill taller than the surrounding trees, the train roaring at terrific speeds along the track as the riders screeched in delight. In another rose a great Ferris wheel, lights flickering in sequence along in many arms. And the final, third, directly ahead and serving a focal point, the apex of the entire park, stood an enormous haunted house attraction, its exterior covered with animatronic ghosts and ghouls. The center hub where I was now standing was occupied by 2 distinct features. The enormous fountain topped by a statue of 3 children at play, and a ticket booth. I looked at the fountain. Streams of water poured from the statue children's mouths. Their lips split into grins so wide that it made me feel slightly uncomfortable. Hundreds of coins lay in the bottom of the fountain, glistening in the moonlight, pouring down from above. Looking up, I saw the pale full moon shone brightly, the upper expanse of sky now devoid of tree branches. I felt for sure that the moon was the closest that I had ever seen it. Fully 2 or 3 times larger than it had ever been before. The shock I felt when the imposed face typically called the man in the moon turned and gave me a full, realized wink and grin was only slightly greater than when I realized that the celestial body possessed far more feminine features than I could have ever imagined before. Beautiful, isn't she? Don't you agree with me? I jumped in surprise as a piping voice spoke from directly behind me. Turning, I found myself confronted with a strange creature. Perhaps 2 feet in height, the being was dressed all in green from his pants and coat to a little hat on his head, and its ears were tapered to points at their ends. All told, it resembled nothing so much as a classic elf from the fairy tales my grandparents had read to me before I fell asleep every night. Yes, she certainly is, I replied, politely, taught through route practice and the switch that one should always behave properly when confronted with the new acquaintances. I'm Trevor. Please, sir, would you tell me where I am? I reached down, offering my hand to shake. The creature giggled, but did not move to shake my hand. Oh, so polite, calling Binkle, sir. But that's not necessary. No, my word. Why is Master Trevor not having his fun? Is that in Fay Hollow is what all children have done. Fay Hollow? Is that the name of this place? The stranger-speaking thing called Binkle nodded animatedly. Yes, Fay Hollow is where all the children come for fun. And when it's done, they're off to run. Now get your tickets, Master Trevor, so you can have fun now. Hurry too, before the night is through. The diminutive creature turned and skipped off down the path to the left. I stood bemused, unsure of how to proceed. I turned my attention to the ticket booth. Its exterior striped with inviting bands of red and white, the window manned by another being that could have been Binkle's twin. I approached the counter and began to rummage my pockets. I'd like some tickets, please, sir. I'm afraid, as I haven't been intending on coming to your fair, I don't have much money on me. Oh, never fear, Master Trevor, dear. Tickets here for children are free. Have as many as you please. The little being held out a handful of red and purple pull tickets towards me. With my left hand, I reached to take the offered slips, but in the moment before my finger would have touched them, my other hand, still in my pocket, brushed the amulet I discovered in the hollow tree along the path just minutes ago. With that contact, I received the biggest shock of the evening. Thus far, as a sort of wave shimmered across the entire tableau of the fairgrounds, and a fog seemed to dissipate before my eyes. I flinched, a knot of dread instantaneously forming in the center of my gut. The red and white striped ticket stand was gone. Instead, replaced by a blocky, 8-foot-tall creature with like living stone. The window, as I had seen it, was now revealed to be the cavernous mouth of a creature, its upper and lower ridges lined with large, sharp-looking teeth, encrusted with flakes of dark reddish-brown, a simply dripping tongue, tipped with tiny yellow spines, exuding an oozing green mucus, extended occupying the very space wherein the elf had been offering my tickets. The fountain behind it was still there, the smiling children upon it. I had seen as statues were instead corpses. The liquid springing from their mouths not clear water, but the red scarlet of fresh blood. The silvery music that had drawn me to the grove was also still present, but instead of whimsical and inviting tune, it was a screeching cacophony of sounding nothing so much as fingernails scratched along a chalkboard. Stumbling back, the hand in my pocket lost contact with the pendant, and instantly the booth fountain and music illusion snapped back into place. The elf in the window, smiling, saccharine sweet, as it reached towards me, arms still extended. I fumbled to try to make words in my mouth, but my tongue felt swollen and unwielding behind my lips. At last, I managed to gasp out, I think I'll look around a bit more before I get my tickets. Sir, I don't want to run, but rush into things. What an incredible effort of will. I turned back the way I came, terrified of that thing might simply decide to reach out and snatch me with that horrific pencil appendage and pull me bodily into its disgusting maw, but not wanting it to see the tears that had sprung to my eyes and begun to slide down my cheeks. As slowly and with as much control as I was able, I retraced my path down the midway in the direction I had entered, moving one shaky step after another back towards the entrance to the fairgrounds. A terrible thought crossed my mind, and after a moment's deliberation, I hesitantly gripped the amulet in my pocket once more. Again, the illusion fell away. And to my growing panic, I realized that it was not merely the ticket booth that had hid a darker and more horrific countenance, but rather the entire landscape and its occupants that were camouflaged behind a glamour of childish beauty. The midway booths alone were enough to give me nightmares for the rest of my life. My cleared perception now saw them as they were, still games and eateries, to be sure, but nothing as innocently joyous as what I had first witnessed. The dart toss had a boy pinned to the wall, each projectile impacting with a sickening thud and a scream of pain from the tortured target. Similarly, at the whack-a-mole station, giggling children wielding sledgehammers pounded away at bloodied and broken heads that rose and fell, so disfigured to be almost unrecognizable. The stands offering refreshments were just as awful. The candy apples were in reality human hands and feet impaled on sticks. And my stomach lurched in disgust as two younger children walked by me, unwittingly devouring their ungodly treats, blood smearing their lips and dribbling down their chins. The various fair patrons were not merely the unknowing perpetrators of the horrors, however, but far to the contrary, the cotton candy appeared to actually be some sort of amorphous jelly that, once taken in hand by an unknowing victim, slowly and inevitably crawled up their arms, surrounding their heads, and began to eat. I saw perhaps 20 children, their heads engulfed by the insatiable blobs, wandering aimlessly, their skin, and in some cases, parts of their skulls simply dissolved away. The hot dogs were strange, wriggling worms, and that slipped themselves into the children's mouths, and with sickening, convulsing motion proceeded to force their way down their throats, several bodies lying about, large open wounds, still bleeding from their exploded stomachs, and told me what happened next. And these were not the worst. No, the distinction belonged to the three main attractions.